On today's episode, Dr. Liz and I welcome back to the show Dr. Alan Hawkins to talk about something that may actually be the bigger story behind marriage right now, the state of dating. Alan has been leading important national research on what's happening in the dating lives of young adults, and the latest findings point to what some are calling a dating recession. What does that mean? Why are so few young adults actively dating, even when most say they want marriage? And what's behind the growing gaps in confidence, resilience, and relationship skills? Alan helps us unpack the data and what it means for young adults, parents, and our culture. Dr. Alan Hawkins retired after 33 years as a professor at Brigham Young University. He earned a PhD in Human Development and Family Studies at Pennsylvania State University in 1990. Professor Hawkins' scholarship and outreach efforts focused on educational interventions and policies to help couples form and sustain healthy marriages and relationships, and to help fathers be engaged in the lives of their children. Since 2000, he has been intricately involved in state and federal policy efforts to support relationship education programs for disadvantaged families. He has served on the Utah Marriage Commission since 2004 and is a past chair of the Utah Marriage Commission. He currently serves as vice chair on the board for the National Association for Relationship and Marriage Education. We hope you enjoy the show. Hey there, friends. Welcome to another episode of the Stronger Marriage Connection podcast. I'm Dr. Dave here at Utah State University alongside Dr. Liz Hale, our psychologist. We're aiming to bring you the very best that we have in research and resources, along with a few tips and tools to help you create the marriage of your dreams. Well, our guest today, backed by popular demand, is both a dear friend and a colleague. And years ago, I was sitting in his class as a BYU student learning from him, and I'm still learning from him today. He's one of the brightest and most knowledgeable marriage and family scholars I've personally ever known. And today we're talking about what we call the dating dilemma. So welcome back to the show, Dr. Alan Hawkins.
Thanks, Dave. Really looking forward to chatting about this topic today, this dating topic.
Yeah, such an important one, a timely one. Alan, we recently celebrated National Marriage Week in February during Valentine's Week, but today we're skipping marriage and we're backing up a bit to focus on dating. Is that because what's happening before marriage may be the bigger story right now, Alan?
Yeah, I think it really is a big story. I think it's a little bit of a forgotten story as well. And so I'm going to try and connect the dots from there up to, stronger marriages. But I agree. Right now, marital formation may be the bigger story than marital maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's happening in the beginning stages, I think probably even going back, we've got our youngest senior in high school, affecting that generation. They're just not dating even a generation ago when I was dating, things look different. So we're excited to jump into to what you have to share with us.
So Alan, then how we date sets a precedence for how we marry?
Yeah, well, there's certainly that, but I'm thinking of it in more basic terms, is that I think dating is the on-ramp to that marital highway. And those on-ramps are broken and broken down, and potholes and all those kinds of things. And so I'm thinking in that more basic way is that it's what comes first. Now, healthy dating obviously is going to create a much more healthy kind of relationship that can transition effectively into marriage. And healthy dating is really important. But just the whole dating system seems to be broken. That is certainly what we hear from young adults these days, that it's just broken down, that those on-ramps just aren't open or aren't working.
And not just young adults, I suppose. It could be anyone dating, right? Even in my age with some dear friends who are...
I focus more on those young adults that are doing so, but we could give a lot of attention at another time to those who are aspiring to a remarriage or to a later life marriage, and the challenges to dating that there. But my focus today is mostly on those young adults who are still aspiring to that first marriage.
Perfect. You've been busy recently, Alan, with the Institute for Family Studies and the Wheatley Institute on the State of Our Unions report that just came out. that details findings from the 2025 National Dating Landscape Survey. And the results point to what is called a dating recession, just like what you're talking about. What does it really mean? And let's talk about how serious is this?
Well, only about 30% of young adults in those prime dating years are actively dating. And by prime dating, I'm talking about probably that 22 to 35. I mean, we could collapse it even more, but I think those are what we're calling those prime dating years. And less than a third are actively dating, which is dating once a month or more. And you've got only a quarter of young women, and only just a little more than a third, about 35% of young men, are dating at least monthly in those prime dating years. So a full-blown depression, maybe not, but a recession for sure. It's just the dating activity that leads to those serious relationships that leads to the altar of matrimony. Those are, that dating process is breaking down.
Yeah, it needs our help. It needs certainly your help, Dr. Alan Hawkins. How does this compare to prior decades, would you say?
I wish I knew, and we don't have good data similar to what we've collected in 2025. Anecdotally, we hear from millennials and Gen Zers and that sort of thing that even the dating culture right now seems very different from what they experienced. And it's certainly different from what I experienced 50 years ago. And so it's maybe not surprising that we're struggling with the pace of change that is going on. But I think it's one of those kind of unspoken problems out there that we do need to address because it's critical in this marriage formation process.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that.
Alan, I'm curious then, if most young adults, at least from the research that we know, and this has dipped a little bit, but most young adults, they still want to marry. They see that as a goal at some point. Maybe, it's getting delayed further and further, I think the research is showing. But is there, a core reason for this? Is this fear? Is it just avoidance? Is it, I want to live my life for a minute? Is it cultural confusion? What's happening?
Well, first of all, you're right. 86% of the youth, the young adults in our survey said that they expect to marry. And so we focus on them. And most, I think the thing that surprised us most about the data was large majorities of them say dating is for building serious relationships, for building emotional connection, for learning what you want in a long-term partner or a spouse, for learning what I'm looking for. Very traditional in that sense. And yet there's this dating recession, not dating very much. Is it fear? Yes. I'm not sure I'd call it avoidance, but I think young adults grew up in this digital age where their social skills were underdeveloped. They probably didn't do much dating in their teenage years. That seems to be fading away. And some cultural confusion about, oh, don't worry about it. When you get through your young adulthood, you'll find your love of your life, and then it'll all happen. As if dating were a non-essential factor these days in terms of marital formation. So I think it's those they don't have the skills. There's some of that fear of social fear there, and I suspect when we look back and get even smarter in a few years, we're going to see that the apps, these dating apps, were not helping very much. This sense of swipe right and swipe left really isn't the skill set that you need. It can be a start. It can probably help, but it doesn't solve the bigger problems around dating. Our survey indicated that there's a very wide lack of confidence in being able to, um, ask somebody out on a date. Probably the most basic skill that there is. And I think, anyway, that there's a lot of need for us to just pay attention to these basic kinds of social skills when we think about being able to solve this dating recession.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure COVID didn't help either, because that was then where everyone was on their devices and no face-to-face interaction. So it feels like this pulling away of like real interaction with people, because now, and we're on Zooms now, and it feels like just there's still communication, but it's less risky, less vulnerable, again, more safe.
It feels safer than real life.
Yeah.
But we've got to develop those skills for real life as well.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. Wow. I think that intimacy, it really is, I think, one of the scariest things we do. It is kind of frightening to be so known by someone. The more you know me, the more you may deem me broken, unlovable, unwanted.
And yet we want that. That's our most basic, fundamental human need, is that sense to be connected, to be known, to be loved in that way. And dating just plays a really important role. But I think, as Dr. Dave said, that there's a lot of fear in that, and that we will be rejected.
I think there's even that fear in marriage, but maybe that's for another time too. I still see that fear continuing with married couples.
We'll be right back after this brief message. And we're back. Well, let's dive right in.
Alan, your data shows low dating confidence kind of across the board, especially women. If women are initiating getting together, what's going on there, do you think?
Yeah, 1 in 5 women say they lack confidence in approaching someone. Now, if we were back in the 20th century, I'd be a little bit more sympathetic here, but this is the 21st century, and I think it's very important for both men and women to be proactive in their dating experiences and their dating choices. Now, maybe maybe the culture still wants women to be a little more coy and flirt as they, try and express their interest in a dating partner. Maybe we've lost the flirting skills. I'm not sure about that. But I think it's really important for women to have these skills. But men aren't a whole lot more confident themselves. Only about 25% to 30%, I think, say that their confidence in being able to just basically approach someone, because rejection is hard. And maybe we've lost a little bit of that grit, that we know is needed in life. And so I think we start there as the most basic skill, is that confidence that I can approach somebody, and not everyone's going to respond, and that's okay. That's just basic learning. But having the confidence and having a little bit of grit to approach people. And again, only about a little more than a third, report that they even trust their judgment in choosing a dating partner. And so maybe we need some help and some instruction that way as well. What are those signs that I can be, first of all, safe in a dating relationship, and second, that this will be a good experience. Okay, maybe it's just a date or two, and we realize there's not much there to connect for us, but getting a sense of, we can improve our odds of finding somebody that, hey, I like this person. I'd really like to develop this relationship. And, if you can't get over those basic kinds of barriers, then, that's a challenge. And I'm hoping that we as first of all, as parents, can help our young adults, develop the greater confidence in approaching someone and trusting your judgment and learning how to find those people who are going to be better choices for us. I think parents have a role that way. And then I just think basic relationship educators, that's my world. We've kind of ignored the whole dating thing. Once a relationship forms, we're there for you. We can teach you healthy relationship skills. But dating skills I think, are a step before that, and they're different. And just those basic getting to know you, and I'm interested in you, and gee, I hope you're interested in me. And maybe we just need to kind of start over again and teach those skills to young adults. I'll put in my plug that I do think we need to encourage teenagers to do dating as well now. We've sort of let that lapse, I think. But and maybe it's not serious one-on-one dating, but it's they should be out in mixed sex groups and even pairing off some, and they should be practicing those dating skills before they get to those more serious prime dating years.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right.
Amen.
Yeah, there's fair amount of social anxiety. There's even some overchoice that I've heard people talk about with the website dating, risk aversion. How much of this is tied to the digital communication, do you think, replacing the face-to-face skill building, Alan?
I do think that the digital world is harming our basic social skills. It may give you a greater sense that there's a lot of people out there that you might be interested in. But our ability to make those kind of early dating choices, I think, is a human skill. And I don't think the digital interface is really helping a whole lot. And so putting yourself in those social situations where you pick up on those human cues much better. Even one of the things that I encourage people to do is get into those situations where you develop friendships with those who might be a part of your dating pool down the road. Develop those friendships, get to know them a little bit. I want to pat the youngest generation on the back a little bit and say, because I think they're much better at building those cross-gender, cross-sex friendships than maybe previous generations have been. And start there. That's a great way to just kind of get to know people. And it's so much easier in many respects to get those dating skills going when you've already got a little bit of a relationship. It's not such a big deal with that.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to plug here, Dr. Hawkins, the Utah Marriage Commission, right, obviously hosts this podcast, and we've been busy the last couple of years. You've been a part of that in moving, pushing. If parents or listeners are saying, yeah, I can do so much, but are there other resources? Man, we have so many wonderful free resources, short e-courses, 10, 15 minutes on dating, relationships. We're even working on one on dating, learning to date again, right? If you've been in a relationship, it hasn't worked out. So we're providing, really our mission is to provide resources to those to help them in their relationships, in parenting and happiness, positivity, all those areas, right?
And I remember that discussion, 2.5 years ago now, where we kind of realized there's this real educational hole in terms of thinking seriously about dating as a system that needs to work, and that people need to have the right knowledge and skills within that system. And so we did create a unique online dating skills course. We call it Dating Ready, where you can, learn and practice those skills in a little bit safer setting online. And Utah Marriage Commission has that course up and running now. I don't even know the data on that, Dave, how popular the course is. You might, but it's there, and we really encourage young adults to check it out. It's free for Utahns, and just numerous lessons I think they're 16, 17 little mini lessons on the skills that you kind of need, from the very early kinds of things to, okay, it's getting a little bit more serious. Now what? To, oh, maybe this isn't working out. Is there a way? Healthy breakups is another part that we talk about there. And also dealing with and recovering from setbacks when, okay, it didn't go right, and how to stay positive about this whole dating environment thing. And then what about if we're getting really serious? And so thinking about engagement, we've got all of those things by one of the premier experts in the field who researches this area. So I really want to plug that for them. Maybe I should also plug it. Maybe parents, you ought to take a sneak peek at that course to give. So maybe you could plug it more for your young adults and encourage them, and also being able to support their learning for that.
And grandparents and aunts and uncles, right?
Sure.
All of us.
There's a whole lot. I think society as a whole needs to be a little more sympathetic towards young adults who are struggling in this world, and not just say, leave it up to them. Go ahead. You figure it out. How about a little sympathy, even a little empathy, and a little bit of encouragement for them to just, this is something that you have to learn, and maybe we dropped the ball and didn't help you learn it very well. But there are resources out there for them to come up to speed.
Yeah, for sure. And the website we're referring to is strongermarriage.org. We'll be sure to put that in our show notes, but strongermarriage.org has so many, over 100, I think, e-courses now that you can access on all kinds of topics, including this dating ready. All right, Alan, switching gears a little bit. If young adults, right, they're strongly prefer serious relationships, you said 86, 87% want marriage, eventually at some point in their life, why does the culture often tell this hookup narrative? We still hear that.
I don't know. I'm not convinced that it's very effective for young adults. That's not what they want. And there's other data out there and other surveys that suggest there's even a sex recession going on for teens and young adults. They want more than I think what culture has told them and what Hollywood has kind of told them their young adult years should be about. In that sense, they're smarter than the culture, I think. And so they need just a little bit of help and education to figure out how to do the dating thing a little bit better, because that's what they want. Now, there are some barriers to that. One problem that we found that surprised us a little bit, the number one barrier for men and the number two barrier for women was money in terms of dating. And I guess I wasn't clued into that. Talked around a little bit more about that. And apparently what's going on out there is that, especially around these early dates, there's this sense that you need to impress your date. And so you need to go to a nice restaurant and get good concert tickets. And so you're already talking hundreds of dollars. And so, okay, I see why money is a barrier if that's your notion of dating. And if I could, one of the things that I'd like to do, my magic wand is broken, Dave and Liz, I'm sorry to say, but if that magic wand was working, I'd like to change that sense of the culture. The best thing you can do for dating is build a situation in which you can talk with each other, get to know each other. Going to a movie, going to a concert is not a good way to talk. Even a restaurant may not be that great. You're shoving food in your mouth. There are other people around. There are waiters interrupting you. The best date to get to know each other is a more quiet time. Just go get, go get a little treat or a coffee or whatever it is, and just sit there and talk and learn about each other. That's cheap. And it's investing. Now, maybe a first date, you spend a little bit more money I don't know, because maybe first dates aren't the best times to start asking all these questions about this person's life, and you just met him or her. But certainly after a first date, I think the better dates are the cheaper. Matter of fact, I think there's an inverse correlation. The more expensive, the less useful that date's going to be in terms of really figuring it out. You want the cheaper dates to talk and to learn and to grow. And then you find out that they have those interests. Light bulb goes on. We could work on that. You know, they love sports. Well, let's get out and do some sports together, or whatever it might be. But there's that. The other really big barrier to dating is having had bad dating experiences in the past. And they get gun shy. They get a much more negative, darker sense about dating. Relationships don't work. And plenty of people in our survey, majorities of them saying that I've turned down possible dates because I'm soured on dating. So, Liz, if your magic wand is still working, maybe you could get the psychologists of the world to help out here. Uh, how can we build more grit for absorbing these bad experiences and staying positive? Because that was one of the things that surprised us in the survey is how big of an issue that was. Sure, dating, you're going to have bumps. You're gonna get some bruises in the process. How do we stay more positive?
Mm-hmm. Right. Like Dr. Brian Willoughby would say, just keep going, right? To students and
just keep going.
Like, just keep going.
We'll be right back after this brief message. And we're back. Well, let's dive right in.
Is that, you talk about relationship grit, Alan? It's and I love that. I love that term. Is that, teachable? How do you share that message of keep going, keep growing?
I think so, and I think that one is where we learn that kind of relationship grit maybe earlier than our 20s. And maybe even just parents have an important role here. If parents are overprotecting their children and not allowing them to stumble and bruise their knees, I think it's harder to develop that grit. We have a sense, I think, that we have to protect our children a little more than we really need to, and allowing them to make those mistakes, and you're that protection a layer back for them, saying, oh, that's so hard. I'm so sad. I'm so sorry. Oh, that must be hard. While all the time as a parent, you're thinking, oh, I'm really glad that you're getting these little bruises now to help you learn that that's not the end of your life right then, because this person that you thought was the best person in the whole world doesn't like you anymore. Those are the ways that we develop grit in our relationships. And we learn an enormous amount about ourselves and about people and about life in those, early teen dating, those dating years as teens, and that are really, really important. If we're not learning them, then that our young adult serious dating years it's going to be harder and harder.
Mm-hmm. It comes back to that, what you were talking about earlier, the dating resilience. I know one of the things I think I read from the report is only about 28% stay positive after setbacks, and 55% say breakups make them more reluctant to try again. So that they get burned, they try it, then they're like, man, I don't want to do that again. I'm not going to risk it for
and
fear
part of grit is being able to know then that those bruises, even the bloody cuts, I learned something important about myself, about other people, about this process. I get smarter. That's how we develop the grit that allows us to absorb those bruises, be depressed for 2 days, and then see that other really cute person that I wasn't paying attention to. Oh, and bounce back, and get back into that dating market, if you will. I think, yes, I think we can learn those skills. And let me put a big push on parents to think about that as an important part of your parenting portfolio, is helping your teenagers and early young adults to develop those that resilience that we need to be able to survive this challenging dating market. It's not easy. Let's put that out there. It's not easy, but it's so rewarding. It's what brings you to the most rewarding things in life. Those serious relationships. I have a 50-year friendship with a young woman I dated in high school, and we were madly in love. And then summer came, and it all disappeared, and my heart was broken forever and ever. And turns out that's not true. We've just been wonderful friends for decades and decades and decades. And it taught me a whole lot about myself and about other people. We will live, we will survive, those kinds of things. But it's the most meaningful thing in the whole world. And to get to our late 20s and not be dating and saying, yeah, sometime that magically that's going to happen for me. I worry about that.
I'm curious, Alan, if you could design one national intervention to close the dating skills gap, what would it look like?
Well, I've already, put in my plug for the Utah Marriage Commission's Dating Ready e-course, but I think we need to think bigger than that, and so I think it's the broader question. We've taken for granted the development of social skills as children grow up and turn into teenagers, into the early young adults. And taking it for granted, I don't think isn't working. And so in terms of an intervention, the first step is just acknowledging the problem that we have. Let's stop ignoring the dating problem. Let's acknowledge that there is one. Let's acknowledge that it's hard. Let's acknowledge that there are skills and that we could learn. Let's start there. And I hate to use this really fancy big word, but let's go ahead and problematize the dating thing. We're not going to scare anybody. Young adults already know that the system is pretty bad, maybe broken, and we're not scaring them. Let's go ahead and admit the problem, and then let's start on that road of learning those things that can help us and make a difference. It's not rocket science that we have to learn. It's basic relationship skills. There's a lot, even the schools are taking on basic socio-emotional learning skills these days. I put in a big thumbs up for schools and our educational institutions that are trying to do that. I'll put in a plug for all institutions that are working with young adults these days to take serious those skills. And I want to encourage practitioners out there, educators and psychologists and therapists, to think about how they can help with this. Can they do a better job of teaching these basic relationship skills, and then the basic dating skills of how to get to know people, how to flirt, how to talk to each other on a date. That's another one that we found out they really struggle with. And let's I don't know, I'm not going to declare a national emergency yet, but come on, let's take this on.
Yeah.
There's a need out there. And I think young adults will appreciate everything that we can give them that way.
I love it.
We'll be right back after this brief message. And we're back. Well, let's dive right in.
Well, where can our listeners, Alan, find the report and all these other helpful resources for their relationship, please?
So I think you could just Google up State of Our Unions 2025.
State of Our Union.
And it would probably, and the title of the report is The Dating Recession. You Google up that and it will be there. It's on the Wheatley Institute website. That's wheatley.byu.edu under their family initiative.
Thank you for that. We're going to add that to our show notes for the easy find. Thank you, Alan.
Well, Alan, as we wrap up, we like to ask all of our guests, as you know, a couple of questions. I don't know if you remember your response from the last time, but we're going to hear your thoughts on this time around. Of what do you feel like is the key? The key, maybe it's stronger marriage connection. Maybe it's key to dating. You know, we changed up the question a little bit. But I'll let you answer what you think is needed right now. What's one of the?
Yeah, I'm going to try and stay on the dating theme to answer that question this time. A stronger marriage first requires a marriage. And a good start to a strong marriage begins with, I think, healthy dating that gets you to fall in love. And yes, you're probably going to fall out of love a couple of times as well and get your heart broken. But falling in love is the most incredible experience in the human repertoire. And it's absolutely core to our well-being, physical, emotional, social well-being. And so I'm gonna stay on this theme. Is let's do the dating thing because it's going to lead us to those greater goods that are out there.
Yeah, well said. Thank you. And our last question: what do you feel like is a key takeaway? Maybe that was it, but if you have another key take-home message you want our listeners to remember from our discussion.
Yeah, I think it's easy to take easy things for granted. And I think we've kind of taken this dating thing for granted. And it's a little bit dusty, maybe a little bit out of disrepair. The batteries are dead. Maybe there's some missing parts in the whole thing. But we've got to give it some attention and some smart people looking at it and kind of fix that system up so that it's working again for our young adults. It's not all their problem. It's very easy to say, well, if you're not dating, you must have a big problem. You know, I think it's bigger than that. I think we all share some of this responsibility for this problem. But I think we also all have a stake in trying to help improve this dating system.
Mm. Yes, we do. Liz, what about you? What's the take-home message?
Yeah, where I'm responsible is my take-home message. I'm flashing in my mind all of the young single adults in my family, young men, young women. And it's like, gosh, when have I really sat down with them one-on-one, even informally, just talking, right? And what it's like just to have a rapport with someone. I mean, there's some of that, but there's always a big group. I think I could do even some more formal approach in this. And taking the advice from what's on strongermarriage.org. I think those are great resources. Even the Gottmans now have a program for singles, and that was recently developed by someone that we had on our show.
I have a colleague who now is doing regular structured group dating events. They're kind of power dating, but she's sort of teaching the skills first and then allowing them to kind of practice with each other as they get to know the people in the room and give them, and then they leave by asking for a date.
Wow.
Actually, no, it's not asking. They actually get assigned a date. And they have to do specific things on a date. Matter of fact, they have to commit to dating this person twice.
Oh,
and, things like that, more structure. I think could also help, particularly with smart people like you, Liz, who have real relationship smarts, maybe, helping them, develop those in this more formal structured setting could work.
We'd love to know that resource. We'll add that to our show notes as well, Alan. Okay. Nice. Thank you. Dave, what about you? What's your greatest takeaway from our interview today with Dr. Alan Hawkins?
Yeah, that's been very insightful. Thanks, Alan. I think that this persistence, this relationship resilience of keep going, even if, that statistic shocked me that they get turned, rejected, or something doesn't work out one time, and they they retreat back to where it's safe, and they don't want to dip their toe in that water again because that didn't feel good. But wow, if you'll just keep going through this, get that relationship, the relational grit that we talked about, and keep going. And I want to almost flip it a little bit for those our listeners who are in a relationship and is strong. Dating doesn't end when you are in the relationship, right? It still takes intentional effort to plan, to make things happen. In fact, maybe a little bit more effort because now I'm in a relationship, but it's worth
No, I would not call dating a natural, organic thing that just emerges. It's just, I don't think it is that, especially not these days. And so I agree with you there. We need to be intentional about this part of the whole relationship system.
Absolutely. Yep. Wonderful. Well, Dr. Alan Hawkins, thanks again for joining us another time. Yeah, we're so grateful to have you on for discussing this important topic. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you. And blessings upon all those young adults out there who are trying to make this dating system work for you. We're going to try and help out. We're going to try and get your back.
Yes, we are. We're trying to do as much as we can to help you through those journey. It's a bumpy road, as Alan talked about, but it's one that is worth it. So thanks for tuning in, friends. We will see you next time. Another episode of Stronger Marriage Connection podcast.
And remember, it's the small things that create a stronger marriage connection. Take care now.
Thanks for joining us today. Hey, do us a favor and take a second to subscribe to our podcast and the Utah Marriage Commission YouTube channel at Utah Marriage Commission, where you can watch this and every episode of the show. Be sure to smash the like button, leave a comment, and share this episode with a friend. You can also follow and interact with us on Instagram at Stronger Marriage Life and Facebook at Stronger Marriage. So be sure to share with us which topics you loved or which guests we should have on the show next. If you want even more resources to improve your marriage or relationship connection, visit strongermarriage.org, where you'll find free workshops, e-courses, in-depth webinars, relationship surveys, and more. Each episode of Stronger Marriage Connection is hosted and sponsored by the Utah Marriage Commission at Utah State University. And finally, a big thanks to our producer, Rex Polanis, and the team at Utah State University, and you, our audience. You make this show possible. The opinions, findings, conclusions, and recommendations expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of the Utah Marriage Commission.